There is no shortage of interesting poltergeist cases all through the history. Some were explained as plain hoaxes, but some remain mystery to this day. The older the case, the harder it is to research and find the real truth behind paranormal activity. What's real and what's not, we leave that to paranormal investigators, but we are going to enjoy these chilling stories nevertheless. Before we start, please like, share and subscribe, or your bed may start shaking tonight, and don't tell me I didn't warn you. The Great Amherst Mystery was a notorious case of reported poltergeist activity in Amherst, Nova Scotia, Canada between 1878 and 1879. It was the subject of an investigation by Walter Hubbell, an actor with an interest in psychic phenomena, who kept what he claimed was a diary of events in the house, later expanded into a popular book. The Amherst Mystery centered on Esther Cox, who lived in the house with her married sister, Olive Teed, Olive's husband Daniel, and two young children. A brother and sister of Esther and Olive also lived in the house, as did Daniel's brother John Teed. According to Hubbell's account, events began at the end of August 1878, after Esther Cox, then aged 18, was subjected to an attempted sexual assault by a male friend. This left her in great distress, and shortly after the physical phenomena began. There were knockings, bangings and rustlings in the night, and Esther herself began to suffer seizures in which her body visibly swallowed and she was feverish and chilled by turns. Then objects in the house took flight. The frightened family called in a doctor. During his visit, bedclothes moved, scratching noises were heard, and the words,
"Esther Cox, you are mine to kill,"
appeared on the wall by the head of Esther's bed. The following day, doctor administered sedative to Esther to calm her and help her sleep. When upon more noises and flying objects manifested themselves, attempts to communicate with the spirit resulted in tapped responses to questions. The phenomena continued for some months and became well known locally. Visitors to the cottage, including clergymen, heard banging and knocking and witnessed moving objects, often when Esther herself was under close observation. In December, Esther fell ill with diphtheria. No phenomena were observed during the 2 weeks she spent in bed, nor during the time she spent recuperating after at the home of a married sister in Sackville, New Brunswick. However, when she returned to Amherst, the mysterious events began again, this time involving the outbreaks of fire in various places in the house. Esther herself now claimed to see the ghost, which threatened to burn the house down unless she left. In January 1879, Esther moved in with another local family, but the manifestations around her continued and were witnessed by many people, some of whom conversed with the ghost by questioning and rapped answers. Some were curious and sympathetic, others believed Esther herself to be responsible for the phenomena, and she was met with some hostility locally. Esther was frequently slapped, pricked and scratched by the ghost, and on one occasion was stabbed in the back with a clasp knife. Interest in the case grew as the news spread, and in late March Esther spent some time in St. John, New Brunswick, where she was investigated by some local gentlemen with an interest in science. By now, several distinct spirits were apparently associated with Esther and communicated with onlookers via knocking and rapping. Bob Nickel, the original ghost, claimed to have been a shoemaker in life, and others identified themselves as Peter Cox, a relative of Esther, and Maggie Fisher. After the visit to St. John, Esther spent some time with the Van Ambers, friends with a peaceful farm near Amherst, and then returned to the Teeds cottage in the summer of 1879, whereupon the phenomenon broke out again. It was at that point that Walter Hubble arrived, attracted by publicity surrounding the case, and moved into the Teed cottage as a lodger to investigate the phenomena. Hubble spent some weeks with Esther and her family, and reported having personally witnessed moving objects, fires and items appearing from nowhere, and claimed that he saw phenomena occur even when Esther herself was in full view and obviously unconnected with them. He also claimed to have witnessed attacks on Esther with pins and other sharp objects, and to have seen her in several of her fits of extreme swelling and pain. He communicated with various named spirits by rapping and listening 3 others, Mary Fisher, Jane Nicol and Elijah McNeil, who were also manifesting themselves as part of events. With Hubble's professional help, Esther Cox embarked on the speaking tour, attracting audience who pay to see her and hear her story. However, she met with some hostile reactions, and after she was heckled one night, a disturbance broke out and the attempt was abandoned. She returned to Amherst once more, working for a man named Arthur Davison, but after his barn burned down, he accused her of arson and she was convicted and sentenced to 4 months in prison, although she was released after only 1. After this, the phenomena gradually ceased for good. Esther Cox subsequently married twice, having a son by each of her husbands. She moved to Brockton, Massachusetts with her second husband and died on 8 November 1912, aged 52. Hubble's book was published in 1879 and proved popular, selling at least 55,000 copies. The Amherst case was also investigated by the British paranormal researcher Hereward Carrington, who took statements from surviving witnesses of the event in 1907 and published them along with a detailed account of the case in 1913. Other researchers look at the case more critically than Hubble, in particular Dr. Walter Prince, in the Proceedings of American Society of Psychical Research, made a detailed case for trickery by Esther Cox while in dissociative state. It has been suggested that certain aspects of the alleged paranormal events at Burley Rectory, sometimes dubbed the most haunted house in England, may be linked to the Amherst case. The experiences of the Foister family there in early 1930s, in particular claims that writing appear mysteriously on the wall, resemble events in the Teed household. Reverend Foister has previously lived at Sackville, near Brunswick, and may well have been aware of the case of Esther Cox. According to pamphlet first published by local minister Alexander Telfair in 1696, a farm called the Ringcroft of Stocking, inhabited by the family of stonemasons and farmer Andrew Mackey, was the site of mysterious occurrences such as stone being thrown, cattle being moved, buildings set on fire, voices heard, family members beaten and dragged, and notes found written in blood. Telfair wrote that neighbors were hit by the rocks and beaten by staves, and that he had seen and felt a ghostly arm which quickly vanished. In the pamphlet, Telfair described things he had considered to have been the occasion of the trouble, including Mackey supposedly taking an oath to devote his firstborn child to devil, clothes left in the house by a woman of ill repute, and failure to burn a tooth buried under the threshold stone by a previous tenant, advised by a spay wife. According to the story, after Telfair and several other clergymen said prayers at the farm, the trouble eventually subsided. Telfair's pamphlet entitled The True Relation of an Apparition, Expressions and Actings of a Spirit which infested the house of Andrew Mackey in Rerrick of Stocking was published by an Edinburgh printer in 1696 and sold at the shop of George Mossman. Telfair's account ascribed the activity to a violent, noisy spirit, and in modern times the episode has been referred to as Rincroft Poltergeist, the Rerrick Poltergeist, or the Mackey Poltergeist. The 4th October 1890 issue of Saturday Review dismissed Telfair's story as a folklore and a curious mixture of obvious naked impostures, saying, "5 ministers, a few lairds and a number of farmers signed this account, in which there is not a single suspicion breathed that the business was merely a practical joke." Mr. Telfair recited it as an argument against atheism, and for the reasons of edification. Mr. Sitwell, in his book Poltergeist, wrote that events described in this story were created by one of Mackey's children using ventriloquism. Sitwell observes that a voice awoke Mackey telling him he would be troubled till Tuesday, and that if Scotland did not repent, it would trouble every family in the land. According to Sitwell, here again there can be no doubt whether that the actual poltergeist was one of the children of the family. This, though, does not make the mystery any less unpleasant. Academics such as historians Lisane Henderson and Ole Grell wrote that Telfair's pamphlet was intended to communicate to a less sophisticated audience and contract what was felt among clergymen of the period to be dangerous influences of skepticism, atheism and deism. Anderson and Grell note Telfair's pamphlet's state purpose to disprove the prevailing spirit of atheism and infidelity in our time, denying both in opinion and practice the existence of spirits, either of God or devils, and consequently a heaven and hell. Rincroft of Stocking was located in the parish of Rerrick. Reportedly, a dead tree is all that remains of Mackey Farm today. So guys, what do you think about these cases? Real or not? Hoaxes or true paranormal activity? Leave your comments down below. Thank you for stopping by, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.